Let me read to you a passage from the first chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 40 to 45. It's the Gospel for Thursday of the first week in Ordinary Time. St. Mark writes, "A man with leprosy came to Jesus and begged him on his knees, 'If you are willing, you can make me clean.' Filled with compassion, Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. 'I am willing,' he said, 'be clean.' Immediately the leprosy left him and he was cured. Jesus sent him away at once with a strong warning, 'See that you do not tell this to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them.' Instead, he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places. Yet the people still came to him from everywhere." That's from Mark chapter 1, verses 40 to 45. It speaks to us of the compassion of Jesus. You know, suffering is unavoidable. That is not to say that certain sufferings are unavoidable. We can avoid the pain that comes from, say, the neglect of one's teeth or certain aspects of one's health by taking care. But it is impossible to avoid suffering in life. The world is so vast that it is impossible that it suit one's convenience at all times and in all situations. In any case, like everything else that is transitory, we must deteriorate and come to our end, and this will involve suffering. But what compounds the suffering is if one suffers alone and without receiving sympathy and compassion. An elderly lady lives in her home and does not want to leave it. Her health is not good, and she suffers many physical and mental frustrations. But what intensifies her difficulties is that no one seems to care about her. She has family, but they too do not show much compassion for and interest in her. They might even find her a bit of a nuisance and wish she would agree to selling up and being committed to a nursing home. She feels her isolation and loneliness, and this leaves her somewhat embittered. If she were surrounded by compassion, it would make so much difference, even in declining health. She would be supported in coming to terms with the approaching end. Due to this lack of compassion for her, she might even be in danger of gradually giving up. By contrast, an elderly woman in her 90th year lives in her own home, which she loves. Her powers are seriously declining, and there is not much she can do. But her family surrounds her with love and compassion, assisting her constantly to do what she wants to do, such as to get to Mass very frequently, to the doctor, to the dentist, and to other outings when this is possible. This elderly woman feels that she is wanted, she is appreciated, and that no one in her family wants to see her suffer. She has plenty of reasons to live, despite what the euthanasia advocates would call her lack of quality of life. All has been made different by the compassion that surrounds her. How great would be the difference to her life were this to have been lacking. Just as a person who received little or no compassion can come to think that her life is meaningless, so there have been thinkers, philosophers, who have thought that the world is meaningless. Ultimately, they think the world is just a brute fact without meaning. It blindly surges along, and its inhabitants are favoured or crushed as chance may have it. It is ultimately a question of being lucky or unlucky, or forceful enough to command attention. Religion is just an opiate, as Marx famously put it. It is an illusion which serves to soften the blow. We might even say that the ultimate question about the world, as with an individual life, is whether at its heart there is compassion. What are the ultimate springs of reality and the universe? Does the universe have a heart, which is to say, a heart of compassion, or is it just a brute? Now, such a question may not formally occur to many people, but they would vaguely feel the issue. The elderly woman whose family surrounds her with love can count on compassion. She can count on being understood and assisted. Well, in some sense, the question is, can man count on reality and the universe being understanding, being compassionate, being helpful in the last analysis? To this vague and very basic question, there has been an answer coming from the Creator of all. It is that the transcendent ground of all things, the source from which all has come, is personal love. Creation is a gift springing from love, but this very creation has been profoundly dislocated by man due to his sin, and thence comes the apparent lack of compassionate love which seems to pervade its workings, the workings of creation. God is love, and so in the final analysis there is love. Man can count on that. And the full revelation of this is the person of Jesus Christ, who is the Word made flesh, dwelling among us. This is his glory which has been seen, the grace and truth of love. In our gospel today that I read earlier, the leper approaches Jesus. How hopeless his condition, how great his need for compassion. If you are willing, he says to Jesus, you can make me clean. And Jesus, filled with compassion, tells him, I am willing, be clean. We read elsewhere that, and I quote, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Mark chapter 6, verse 34. And again, seeing the crowds, he said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. In Mark chapter 8, verse 2. Or again, as Jesus approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, don't cry. Luke chapter 7, verse 12 to 13. Christ was overflowing with strong compassion, and in this he was the revelation of God. Whatever happens, even if we are not blessed with the compassion of others, we may and must always rely on the compassion of God.